They told you to follow your dreams, but they never told you what it would cost to build the habits that would hold them. No one talks about the war between who you are and who you pretend to be just to get through the day. No one teaches you how to stay committed to a version of yourself you've never seen but somehow believe in. Maybe that's what's been eating at you, that quiet ache, that sense that time is passing and you're not living the life you were supposed to. Not because you're incapable, but because you keep abandoning the one thing that was always yours to control, your consistency. Every time you start, you feel a spark. You imagine the version of you that finally makes it, finally gets it right. You see glimpses, but then life happens. You lose focus, you make excuses, you wait for motivation that never comes, and you start over again. You've called yourself lazy. You've convinced yourself you're not built for discipline. You've internalized shame as if failure was part of your DNA. But what if I told you that's not the truth? What if I told you your inconsistency isn't weakness, it's protection? That the parts of you that keep sabotaging your progress aren't evil. They're wounded. They're scared. They've been trained to expect the worst, to play small, to fear success as much as failure. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And this is the unconscious, that hidden part of you that thinks consistency is dangerous. Because if you really showed up every day, if you really gave it everything and it still wasn't enough, what then? Better to stay inconsistent. At least then you have an excuse. At least then you don't have to face your own limits. But here's the secret Jung knew. You don't discover who you are by thinking about it. You find yourself in the fire. You forge yourself through action, through repetition, through showing up. Not perfectly, not beautifully, but consistently. You want confidence? Earn it. You want peace? Build it. You want freedom? Discipline is the gate. There is no path to the future without becoming the kind of person the future can trust. And right now, your future is waiting, not for perfection, not for genius, not for motivation, but for you to be consistent enough to arrive. You already have everything you need. What you lack is the belief that showing up every day, even when it's boring, even when it's ugly, is spiritual, is powerful, is how you become who you were meant to be. Not in a single moment of clarity, but in thousands of ordinary days layered with intentional choices. You are not the version of yourself you fantasize about. You are not the potential you keep avoiding. You are only as strong as what you do repeatedly. And your life is waiting for you to stop treating consistency like a chore and start treating it like a sacred act of rebellion.
And here's the truth no one ever told you. Consistency is not just about habits. It's about identity. When you keep showing up, even when the world offers no applause, no results, no signs, you're doing something deeper than building discipline. You're proving to your own psyche that you are someone who stays. Most people don't stay. They run when it gets hard, they retreat when no one watches, they flinch at the silence that follows the work. They crumble under the weight of invisibility. But you've chosen the harder path, and that changes you. Because Carl Jung understood something few ever grasp. To change the outer world, you must first confront the inner fractures, the parts of you that don't believe you're worthy of consistency, the shadows that whisper, "Why even try?" You silence those whispers not by arguing with them, but by acting in defiance of them. One small act, repeated with intention, day after day, becomes a bridge over your deepest doubts, a quiet revolution in the nervous system. Not all wars are loud. Some are waged in the early morning when no one is watching, when it would be so easy to choose comfort over commitment. But you choose to show up, even when it hurts, even when it feels pointless, even when no one validates you. That's where the transformation happens, not in the grand gestures, but in the hidden ones. The world loves the dramatic breakthrough, the overnight success, the viral moment. But the truth, the real lasting change, Jung would say, emerges not from the conscious decision alone, but from the integration of the unconscious into your daily walk. Consistency is sacred. It's how the soul slowly makes its way back to center. When you push through resistance, not just external, but internal, you begin to shape a new reality. The resistance itself becomes your teacher. It shows you where your mind betrays you, where your wounds still dictate your story, where your fears still anchor you to old identities. So what do? You lean in, you keep going, you meet the resistance with breath, with focus, with unwavering presence. And over time, something shifts, not in one explosive moment, but in a quiet, almost imperceptible way. You realize you're no longer negotiating with the part of you that wants to quit. That voice gets quieter, because now you've built something stronger, a sense of self forged in persistence. This is what makes you untouchable. Not the results, not the praise, but the unshakable knowing, I show up for me. And that is the foundation of a life that no one can steal from you. You begin to live on a different timeline. While others chase peaks and crash in valleys, you move steadily. You evolve. You rise, not because of speed, but because of direction. Because now, consistency is no longer a strategy. It's who you are. And the world will try to pull you back into urgency, into comparison, into doubt. But you'll feel it. The difference, the grounding, the depth. Carl Jung once said, your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes. You've looked inside. You've awakened. And now nothing and no one can make you forget who you've become.
But there's a turning point few ever recognize. A quiet breaking of the tide. Not loud, not sudden, just a subtle moment when the pain no longer controls you, but teaches you. A moment when suffering stops being a prison and starts becoming a teacher. And in that moment, everything changes. You stop chasing things to numb the ache. You stop seeking validation from people who never saw you. You stop abandoning your own soul for a glimpse of someone else's attention. You start returning to yourself. Slowly, unsteadily, but surely. And as you do, you begin to understand. The addiction was never the real problem. The problem was the silence inside you, the forgotten stories, the unhealed grief, the child who never felt safe enough to speak. Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And this is your fate no longer. Because now you're beginning to see, you're beginning to remember, you're beginning to choose. Healing isn't about perfection. It's about presence. It's about facing the very thing you swore you never would. And when you do, when you finally look your own darkness in the eye, not to destroy it, but to understand it, something sacred happens. You integrate. You return. You stop fighting with yourself. This is where freedom begins, not in escaping pain, but in becoming someone who can sit with it without losing themselves. Someone who can be present with their shadows and still speak with light. And it's not traumatic. It's not grand. It's not something the world will always notice. But you will. The first time you no longer need to reach for the thing that once ruled you. The first time you pause, breathe, and stay. The first time you choose truth over habit. That is the beginning of the new life. And maybe no one will understand how much strength it took, how many nights you cried alone, how many mornings you wanted to give up, but you'll know. And that will be enough. You didn't need to be perfect. You just needed to be real. And now you are. So if you're here, if you've come this far, I want you to hear this. You are not broken. You are not lost. You are not too late. You are awakening. And in a world asleep to its pain, your awareness is a miracle. So don't stop now. Don't retreat back into numbness. Don't listen to the voice that tells you healing is impossible, because the very fact that you're still listening means it's already begun. And if you ever forget your worth, remember this. The real you was never gone, just hidden, waiting, and now returning. So take a deep breath, not to escape, but to arrive. You are here, and this is where the real story begins. You've listened with your heart. You've stayed when it hurt. You've faced yourself, even when the mirror trembled. And if this message found something sacred in you, something you forgot or buried, then this is the sign, not just to hear, but to rise. Subscribe now, not for us, but for the part of you that knows this is your time. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Your story isn't over. It's just beginning. And we'll walk this road with you. Every word, every step, every awakening, until the silence inside you finally sings.
And yet, even now, there are parts of you still hiding in the silence. You've done so much work already. You've peeled away the masks one by one. You've stared into mirrors you used to avoid. You've stood in front of your pain without flinching. And still, there are shadows that haven't spoken yet. They wait, quietly, behind the eyes you show to the world, behind your voice, your strength, your kindness. These are the parts of you that formed in the earliest betrayals, the moments when your soul realized it wasn't safe to be fully seen. Maybe it was the way someone laughed at your dreams, or the moment you cried and nobody came, or the day you tried to explain what you felt and were told you were too much. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's what so many do. They call it fate. They call it bad luck. They call it God punishing them. But really, it's the map of their unexamined wounds writing the script. But you've stopped accepting that script. You're rewriting it. You've stopped blaming fate and started questioning patterns. You've stopped begging for love and started learning self-respect. You've stopped asking for permission to feel and started honoring your truth. But healing isn't clean. It's not a straight line. It's a slow remembering. It's touching the old pain with new awareness. And that hurts more than people tell you. Because you're not just feeling your pain, you're grieving who you had to become in order to survive. You're grieving the silence you were forced into. You're grieving the years lost to pretending. You're grieving how long you had to live half alive. But grief is sacred. Grief is the evidence that your soul is coming back to life. And somewhere in this ache, you find your own voice. Not the one trained to please, not the one shaped by trauma, but the voice that existed before the world got to you. That voice, your true self, doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It doesn't need to explain or prove. It simply is. And when it begins to speak again, even in whispers, your entire world begins to shift. You make different choices. You attract different people. You walk differently. You breathe differently. Because now, your life is no longer a performance. It's a reclamation. You are no longer chasing wholeness, you are becoming it. And in that sacred process, you discover a new kind of peace. Not the peace that comes from avoiding pain, but the peace that comes from embracing your entire story. You stop fearing your depth. You stop apologizing for your passion. You stop hiding your soul just to keep the world comfortable. And that's when you realize you were never broken. You were never too much. You were just buried. Buried beneath years of silence, survival, shame. But now you rise. And not in rage, not in noise, but in quiet power. The kind that doesn't need validation, the kind that doesn't need applause, the kind that simply knows who it is. This is what Jung meant by individuation. The slow, courageous process of becoming whole, of integrating the shadow, of honoring the light, of stepping fully into your truth. And maybe, just maybe, you begin to understand why your life unfolded the way it did. Not because you were being punished, not because you were unworthy, but because you were being forged, prepared for something sacred. Not everyone makes it here, but you did. And if your soul feels this, stay.
And still, even after all the patterns, all the battles, all the moments you almost gave up, there's a voice inside you that refuses to die. It's not always loud. In fact, most days it's just a whisper, but it's there. Every time you fall and crawl your way back up, every time you look in the mirror and decide not to abandon yourself again, that voice speaks, "I'm not done yet." You've lived through seasons that no one else saw. You held the weight of silence, disappointment, and shame that didn't belong to you. You were taught to suppress your needs, to hide your emotions, to act as if nothing touched you. But it touched you. It marked you. It woke something in you that will never go back to sleep. Carl Jung understood this inner war. He called it the confrontation with the shadow. The moment when your illusions collapse and your real self begins to rise. Not the self that was groomed to please, to obey, to survive, but the deeper self, the one made of truth, of fire, of God-breathed courage. This is why you've never fully fit in. This is why the shallow never satisfied you. This is why your soul aches for more even when everything looks fine on the outside. Because you were never meant to be average. You were meant to become whole. And becoming whole is not a straight road. It is a spiral, a sacred unraveling of every mask, every lie, every inherited story. It is a sacred rebellion against the false self. The world doesn't need more perfection. It needs more people who are real. Real with their grief, real with their rage, real with their hope, real with their healing. You were never too much. You were simply surrounded by those who were too afraid. But the time for hiding is over. The time for silence is over. The time for shrinking, apologizing, waiting for permission is over. This is the hour to rise, to speak with the voice you once buried, to stand with the spine you once bent, to choose yourself in the places you once abandoned your truth. You are not broken. You are becoming. So don't stop now. Don't turn away now. Don't listen to the fear that says you are not ready. You are ready. You are exactly where you need to be to take the next step. And if you've made it this far, there's something inside you that already knows this. You weren't meant to just survive life. You were meant to be transformed by it. And that transformation begins when you say, no more running, no more hiding. I'm here, all of me. Now, breathe, because this is not the end, it's the beginning. And if this message has spoken to you, if something stirred in your chest, if you felt like for once someone finally put words to the storm inside you, then this space is for you. This channel isn't just content, it's a mirror, a reminder, a place to come back to when the world feels too loud and your soul needs truth. So if you're ready to go deeper, if you're done pretending, if you're done living a half-life, subscribe now. Join the thousands who are waking up, who are remembering who they really are, who are choosing wholeness over performance. This is your invitation, not to follow me, but to follow yourself, the real you, the brave you, the you that refuses to settle. We'll meet again in the next story, but until then, stay awake, stay real, and stay whole.